We have a big show today about the Lions. They opened the season against the Vikings on Sunday and started off with a win. Started off the right way. So, Tim, what did you think? Just first impressions about the game itself on Sunday.
We talked about it on this show and about how it's a very important game. It's a division game worth two. The Vikings bookend the season. They start and end it. And I said that this Minnesota series could be the difference between an 8-8 or a 10-6. And that could be the difference between the playoffs or, obviously another mediocre season. I will say at the very beginning, I thought it was just kind of same old Lions. And I know they start slow, but we're going to break it down and everything. But they get the ball, get into the red zone after a couple nice plays, and then just stall. It's like there's a wall at the 20. It was that way in the preseason. It was that way a lot of times last year. They get in the red zone and just they can't do anything. And then they go to kick the field goal, fumble the snap. Vikings get it. And then the Vikings' very first play, Adrian Peterson, 78-yard touchdown run. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. It's the only thing worse than doing that beginning. It's like giving up the opening kickoff for a touchdown. To turn the ball over, take 3 points off the board and then hand them 7 points right away. I know he's Adrian Peterson, but he was untouched the entire run. He just ran right through, touchdown. So I thought it was same old Lions. And I know there were some calls that didn't exactly go the Lions' way throughout the game. But unlike past seasons, where I know many fans have complained and I hate Detroit and all that, I thought that they actually responded well. And I know it's a cliche, the overcoming adversity, but you still have a chance to win the game, and they took that chance. And I'm glad, because I know if they would have lost, everybody would have pointed to a couple different plays and calls, and that's why we lost the game. But the Lions didn't lose they overcame that and beat a team that they should have beaten on opening day.
Well, the bottom line is that they played well.
Absolutely.
Even in the opening drive and in the first half, which was sloppy, which I said that it would be on our last show. They played well. They had 11 penalties for 88 yards, which is not a good thing, but that's the Lions. It is what it is. The Jim Schwartz coach ball club is going to have a lot of penalties. There's not anything that's going to change that. They've proven over and over again. Louis Delmas gets a taunting penalty, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And Jim Schwartz doesn't pull him out of the game. So he's not going to hold guys accountable for the things that they do on the field by punishing them during the game. So what do you expect? Yep. The definition of, idiocy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change. So the Lions are the Lions. That's how they are. Yep. They're not the most disciplined team.
Absolutely not.
But what they are is they're hard-headed, they're tough, and they're going to go out there and play football. So if you want to get behind it, then get behind it. If you don't, then don't be a fan, And that's the thing that I noticed coming out of the first half especially. Lots of negativity on Twitter. Yeah. Lots of bashing of the offense, which I thought was outstanding. Better than I could have imagined in the first half.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were able to, finally put together and sustain drives in the second half. The first half, like I said, they struggled a bit, and they, like you said, they were a bit sloppy. But if I were to, give a game ball to one or two guys, it would be Reggie Bush, nearly 200 yards of offense. And I know it would be Christian Ponder, because that game was close back and forth. And I think Christian Ponder proved that, not that he was a bust in the first round, but at least right now he is not capable of winning a game. And he lost the game for the Vikings.
But you have to point out that the Lions destroyed Adrian Peterson.
Well, they did, absolutely. But it was a close game back and forth, and really the turning point there in the fourth quarter was, Ponder trips over himself and can't hand off the ball to Adrian Peterson, which is their offense, and a fumble, Lions recover, and they were able to get two quick scores right after one another, which really turned the tide of the game.
Right, but unlike the Lions, the Vikings are completely one-dimensional.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
So if you force them as a defense, which the Lions did, into throwing the ball by, playing with the lead, that's how you force them into making mistakes.
Last week on the show I said, Puckett, what are we going to be talking about next week? And I said, I really think that this defensive line, which is their biggest strength, I think we're going to be talking about how they shut down last year's MVP and contain him. And I said, now containing him might be holding him to, 100 yards or so, but you're still containing him. And yes, that first play was 78 yards, but after that, he was non-existent.
He had 18 carries for 16 yards.
And they absolutely
something like that.
I think maybe, and you saw this all across the NFL. That first Sunday, it's the first real game. Players, you talk about jitters or I don't know, emotions. Really, the defense, frankly, they got caught flat-footed, and it didn't help that they came right after a play where they should have had 3 points. Really should have had 7 points marching down the field. Can't get there. Should get 3 points. And momentum. So we talk about that, and then the defense just they weren't even out of position. They just didn't tackle him. He just ran right through everybody.
Jim Schwartz said after the game, it's tough to give up a 78-yard run when everybody on the defense knows they're giving him the ball, everybody in the crowd knows they're giving him the ball, and everybody on watching TV knows that who's getting the ball.
Right, on first down,
and they've been talking about Adrian Peterson. When you open with the Vikings, you've been talking about Adrian Peterson for 6 months.
And I said on the show, I really think that the defensive line is going to shut him down. And they did, aside from that run. Now, for me, he had a great fantasy day. He had like 3 touchdowns because he had caught one. But overall, they were able to contain him, and then you force Christian Ponder to try. And I said maybe that's a storyline we're going to be talking about. Maybe the secondary isn't, up to task, and maybe they struggle, and maybe Christian Ponder makes a star out of some of his receivers there. Now, yes, he had that really nice deep ball to Simpson, but there was I don't know where either of your safeties were. But besides that, Quinn. I thought he played outstanding. He had a pick at the end to kind of seal the game. Delmas, he looked decent. He didn't. He wasn't.
Yeah, he was I thought he was a little bit rusty.
Exactly.
But the bottom line is that he came out of the game healthy, which is all you can ask.
And he didn't really make that one deep ball to Simpson that then set up their touchdown. But
and the thing with Delmas, before you go on to the rest of the secondary, the thing with Delmas is that even if he's not making the play, he makes the defense better.
Oh yes, he does.
He just by being there. Right. So that's what
is he better than Carey? The back? Yeah. Absolutely. So Carey's a great special teams guy, but not a safety. So overall, I thought the defensive line really played well, But then on the offensive side, I thought Stafford he looked okay. There was once again there was some passes that were I didn't exactly attribute. People are like, oh, he's not accurate. I thought it was miscommunication. I don't know. There were some that were off, but later in the game, he was crisp and right where it needed to be. But I thought that the star of the offense was clearly Reggie Bush. He took over he had all those rushing yards, nearly 100 rushing yards, and then on the receiving end, he takes a screen pass 80 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah, and I thought Reggie Bush was definitely the MVP of the game.
Yes.
Like you said, 190 total yards, which is pretty much all that matters with Reggie Bush. He had 90 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving, but total yards is a good bearing for where he's at. And he could have had more touchdowns than he did, just ending up with the one. Mm-hmm. But, one got called back.
Yep.
One, they got to the goal line and bring Joy Bell in, which they should do that.
Yep.
And Joy Bell gets 2 touchdowns, which, what it is.
It's called a vulture in fantasy football.
Right. So, he's like your big bruiser back. But I thought Matthew Stafford was outstanding the whole game. He was 28 for 43. They had 5 dropped passes. So I can think of one to Tony Scheffler, which would have been a touchdown that Scheffler dropped. Calvin dropped one. One that was ruled an incompletion because it could have been a touchdown, but the Calvin Johnson rule was applied once again.
Yes.
But that throw, I thought the 2 best throws he made all day were both incompletions. The one to Calvin, that would have been Calvin's first touchdown of the season and the first touchdown in the game. He threw sidearmed, but he did it to avoid a defensive lineman and put that thing right on the money for Calvin to catch it and then dive into the end zone, which apparently is not a catch anymore. And the other one that I thought was outstanding was the one to Tony Scheffler. Scheffler was covered by a linebacker. He was doing kind of like a seam route off of the tight end position, and right as he broke free from that linebacker, Stafford put it right on his hands and he dropped it. So I thought those two were the two of the best throws that he made all day. Now, his numbers are somewhat inflated when you have an 80-yard screen pass.
Yes.
In which Reggie Bush does all the work. But it's still yards, and yards aren't all that matters. But the thing that's important is that he threw 2 touchdowns and only 1 pick. The pick was deflected, and if your touchdown-interception ratio is 2-1 for the whole season, that's not so bad.
That pick was frustrating. I was watching that portion of the game in a very loud bar downtown, and when I initially saw it, I thought it was just a really bad pass by Stafford.
No, the funny thing about it was it came out of his hand in a tight spiral. And when it was tipped, it stayed in that tight spiral.
It didn't really. It was really odd, and it was right after the Lions had forced a turnover. Right, it was like back, bam, bam. But I thought the one that I liked was the new guy, the tight end, the Ferreira, whatever. Yeah. That was a nice pass where only where he can get it. Now the one where Calvin, the whole process thing, that one was made by, he's able to, the sidearm, and I know that draws a lot of criticism, but he put that where then Calvin, as he's like leaping in the air, is able to get it, because if Calvin, if that's just your average NFL receiver, that's a pick to the safety that's waiting back there.
Well, but that's the idea. You throw it to...
no, I completely agree.
You adjust your throw to what receiver
I'm saying he's not making that throw to, Ryan Well,
he wouldn't throw it to that person at all
that's
in
right.
that coverage.
It's just, it was a nice play. But what really impressed me was Reggie Bush. You bring him in, high price free agent, but he proved his worth. I thought what was interesting, you mentioned him a little bit, was Joik Bell, your bruiser, and he has some decent speed, and he led the whole ho-hey chants, and people love that.
That was funny.
But what I thought was interesting is Mikel LaSure was inactive.
Yeah.
Some people are saying, already labeling him a bust in terms of draft. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's interesting that a high pick in LaSure, your second rounder from a couple years ago, is now given way to this undrafted nobody from, I know, local, but Wayne State isn't exactly a powerhouse. Yeah. But that it's a nice little tandem there with Bush and Bell.
Right, and it gives you that thunder and lightning that other teams have had. I think of Darren Sproles and Mark Ingram. That's a solid 1-2 punch right there. And Joik Bell has made Mikel LaSure completely expendable, 100%. He didn't even dress. So, and yes, he gives you depth. Mikel LaSure does, but you're not looking for depth with a second-round pick. So it makes Mayhew look bad for drafting him, but good for Joik Bell. Undrafted guy. He put in his time at different training camps for different teams. And now he's carved himself out a spot here where he is a productive role player on this high potent offense.
And looking at the box score, a couple things that jumped out to me were that you held Minnesota to 2 for 10 on third down.
Yep.
And then time of possession is really slight in the Lions' way, where it was 36-23 basically. Now early in the game, the Lions had 10 more minutes of possession, but they were down 14-3 or whatever. And that was slated because the Vikings had a home run play, and then the turnover. It was just boom, boom. And the other thing is turnovers. When I always say usually turnovers is the first thing, and when it's 4-2, you're generally going to win a game. Even it can be close. You look at I think that Sunday night game,
the
Giants game,
almost won.
But you don't really deserve to win a game when you turn the ball over 5 times like New York did.
Right.
But the biggest, not the biggest thing, but for in terms of a negative for the Lions is that the penalty is 11 for 88. And I know that's, and you talked a little bit about there at the beginning in terms of discipline. There was some 15-yarders, so that can make those yards go up. But that's something that, and it seems like a lot of people say this, that's something I would like to see if you're a Lions fan, go down a bit.
Would you like to see it? Yes, but I don't think you're going to. I just don't. That's how they play. They're, I'm not going to use the word thug, but they just play hard, and they play, maybe not the brand of football that the NFL enjoys. So, is Nick Fairley out there taking out people's knees, and is Sue maybe throwing a little bit of a block that's not the best thing he could do, yes, that's going to happen. And is Louis Delmas talking to the guys on the sideline? Yeah. But usually I would say that that's not flagged for a 15-yard penalty, maybe because it's the Lions it is, but you just got to live with it. It just is what it is. I borderline for me, I'm done talking about it because I don't think you're going to change it. So
well, that's all well and good, but and you brought up that Subana that took 7 points off the board, and then there was an interception. Yep. And then you took the drive away, and you do that against the Vikings, you're able to outscore them, you're able to outscore them 24-10 in the second half and win the game. But you do that against some of the better teams, like a Packers or Bears in this division, you might not be coming out on the winning side of football games if you're committing those penalties. And you can talk about that whole thug nature and all that. I mean, you just got to keep some of that in check. And by the way, the quarterback ratings in this game, Christian Ponder was 20.4, and then Stafford was 57.4. Just kind of interesting.
For a quarterback rating?
That's what it's... you know what? That's
completion percentage.
No. That's the ESPN quarterback rating.
Oh.
That threw me off because I was like, wow, Christian Ponder had a really bad day.
No, Stafford played well.
He played, and he was decent. I don't think... I think he can do better. But he was decent, and that one pick was a deflection. I didn't really see him forcing too much, and there's one sack on there, and I'm not sure if one of the most bizarre plays I saw during the game was the one where it helped my fantasy team, but they did almost like a read option play, which if you're RG3
that was a broken play.
That it was weird, and like I said, I was watching the majority of the game.
That was the only sack too.
And Schwartz even said in his post game press conference, he said that should not be counted as a sack, and they'll change it. But it'll be. I don't know if they'll change that, like the official scores.
But
Jared Allen he ran right into Jared, and because if you're RG3 or Vic or at the college game, you're Russell Wilson. That's kind of become the thing right now, the popular thing right now in the NFL.
You're not going to run with
Matthew Stafford. And it was really bizarre, and all of a sudden he started just running to the sideline, it just was weird.
Yeah.
But I thought he people talk about his quick release, and I know that other than him, there's guys like Tony Romo. I know he's not your favorite, but he might have a quicker release.
Stafford, Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub's got a quick release.
Stafford had a terrific at not, holding on to the ball too long and taking sacks.
Well, and the other guy that I wanted to talk about was Riley Reif. Mm-hmm. The only sack he allowed was that broken play, read option.
Yeah, it helped my fantasy team.
Thing. So,
thanks, Jared Allen.
He didn't really have an effect on the game at all. He had one hit on Stafford after he released the ball, in which Riley Reif was had to help Stafford up. Didn't keep his jersey clean, I guess you'd say, mm-hmm. But. Other than that, there was really nothing. And Riley Reif, to step in as the first or second time, I guess, he started a game, outstanding. You're going against one of, if not the best defensive end that you'll see all year long.
Probably, yeah.
He might
Peppers.
see, Julius Peppers. And, if you could go through the schedule, maybe find one or two. But, maybe one of the best, definitely one of the best defensive ends he'll see all year. A veteran, a guy who has given Jeff Backus fits.
Yep.
And Riley Reif almost, I won't use the word dominated, but he was very, very good.
And I know that you label Stafford as the most important Lion, and that's understandable when he's your quarterback. And that's when you invest that kind of money. He just got the contract. Your season really can hang in the balance on his health. And that's not an overstatement. It is.
Right.
And I think of you, like you said, you kept his jersey clean for the most part, and that was nice to see him not constantly on the ground. I think of that Sunday night game, Romo was on the ground the entire time. As a Steeler fan, Roethlisberger was on the ground the entire game. There's the one hit, he got hit in the head, and they called a penalty, and that was really it. I know you.
I thought that was a. Not a great call.
It was pretty weak, but they're not all of them always go against the Lions. It was pretty weak call. I kept the drive alive, regardless.
It was nice to see after some of the calls in the first.
I will say
it
was not as bad as the Notre Dame pass interference on the sideline, the Michigan game.
Gosh.
That's
we'll
probably
get into
the worst.
That later,
it's probably the worst. And there was a bad pass interference in the Steeler game, but nobody cares on these airwaves. overall, though, I like I said, Reggie Bush MVP. Stafford, he can do better, but he didn't. He didn't cost the Lions a game. Calvin, his stat line doesn't look that great, but maybe if you count that touchdown, then.
Well, and that's. I mean, I've been saying since we started this show that Stafford is more important than Calvin, and that is not something that's
right and
really widely agreed upon in the Metro Detroit area, but. I think this game proves it more than any other example I can give.
And I know that we were texting each other on Sunday, and you said, he threw the ball to 9 different guys, and 8 of them have a catch. Scheffler is on the stat line because he had a drop, and that easily could have been a touchdown probably. But and Pettigrew, he cost the line. I mean, Pettigrew. That's if you talk about the worst. I think the Vikings Ponder really played poorly in the second half. I think Pettigrew just. It was frustrating. You would look up, it was like all in like the course of about like 6 minutes of real time, not game time, real time. He had like a penalty, and then he had the fumble, and then he had like it was just all.
Well, from what I can remember, I think he was targeted 3 times. Is that right? 4 times. Okay, he was targeted 4 times. Does he have 1 catch or 2?
He has 2 for 6 yards, and the one he like caught and fell down.
Right. The one that I can remember is he caught 1 pass early in the game. And then dropped a ball for a first down.
Yep.
Then the next drive, or
it was right after a turnover. That's what I'm saying. It was like 6 minutes of real time. The Lions immediately got the ball back.
The next drive, he catches the ball, is running down the field, and literally just drops it for no reason.
And that was after a penalty he committed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not going to say he was untouched, but boy, it was bad.
I mean, you're in the NFL. You expect to.
And he dropped it, to the Vikings. They just bounced on it.
And like you said, that first half was really sloppy, and that was really a showcase right there. I mean, it was that, and then when the Lions recover a Vikings fumble, and then Stafford gets the ball deflected, intercept. I mean, it was all, that all happened in the second quarter.
Right, that was after the Tulloch pick six, or the Levy pick 6.
Right, and that's that. We were talking about that, and I talked penalties earlier, and you said, maybe that's what this team. I think if you're going to want to win against some better teams, you're going to have to cut down. I think that's just a matter of fact.
The thing that I point to is that last year the Baltimore Ravens were the most penalized team in the NFL. Yeah, and they won the Super Bowl.
No, that's a good point. I mean,
now, do I think that the Lions are as talented as the Ravens were last year? Probably not.
Yeah.
Do I think they're as good of a team? No, I don't. But it's possible to win while being penalized. And the Ravens. If the Lions play the same brand of football that the Ravens have been playing for the last 10 years, I'm okay with that.
I mean, that's the Ravens and Steelers, and that's that smash mouth AFC North, cold weather, let's go, and that's fun to watch.
The Bears defense is known for that. Yep. Like you said, the Steelers and the Ravens.
It is kind of different though, because you watch these Steelers Ravens. It's immediately like Monday night slot. And the game's like 10-6 in the sleet, and everybody's like, wow, what a football game. But, Lions-Packers would be like 41-38. But you could still have that brand of
You can
defense.
still play smash-mouth football and score points. Yeah. And if anything, I think that's a better combination. Like, heaven forbid that you have a quarterback better than Joe Flacco and a good defense. And obviously he's won a Super Bowl now, but it's better when you can pair those things together, because it's very difficult to have that outstanding defense, which I don't think the Lions have yet, and a great offense that can score points, because those things don't really go together ever. You either have the offense like the Colts of the early 2000s and no defense, or you have the defense with no offense. So let's talk about the Sue hit.
Right. Speaking of penalties and defense.
Right. So DeAndre Levy intercepts the pass.
A really bad pass by Pockett.
It was.
Really bad pass.
DeAndre Levy picks it off, running down the sideline. I will admit I only saw it live. I haven't been able to watch it again.
Okay.
But it was well behind the play.
Way
Ndamukong Suh dives out towards the Vikings center and basically hit him in the knee.
Right in the knee.
And in my opinion, the Vikings guy kind of played it up a bit. He rolled over, was grabbing his knee, and the flag was more, in my opinion, in response to him grabbing his knee
maybe
than the actual penalty itself. It's kind of like in hockey.
It's a brand new rule. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a brand new rule because the story's out today. It's the lead story in ESPN that he was fined $100,000.
It's the highest fine by any event that occurred on the field.
On the field, exactly. And Ray Lewis's murder charges brought $250,000, but that's regardless. He still got to win 2 reigns.
And it also doesn't involve things where players got their game check suspended.
Right, and this, ESPN tries to say he basically lost money playing Sunday because he did the restructuring thing where he makes his signing bonus.
That is kind of funny.
He makes his signing bonus $11.5 million, and he only makes $630,000.
Right, so he made like $40,000 on Sunday.
And they're like, but I'm sure Sue's doing just fine.
Well, yeah,
with his garage of classic cars.
But it's a funny stat that he lost money.
My opinion is I saw it happen, and it didn't really. It was kind of just off the edge of the screen live because Levy was just racing on the sideline. You look at it on a replay, and Sue is such a frustrating player, and I've said this on the show before. He is extremely talented. He's probably one of the top 3, not just top 3 defensive players in the league. Easily the best lineman in the league. Defensive tackle. Incredibly strong. He's really good at that, and he's not just a run stuffer. He can do it. I've always said I really liked his freshman year in the NFL when they had him playing that joker position, and he could do a lot because he's so athletic. Regardless, the play he's such a weird guy. He has.
I think he's getting better though.
Maybe, and I know it was a big deal. They named him a captain, and that's great. But and he even apologized to the team this morning in the meeting.
Right, and
I went up in front of everybody.
Apologized to DeAndre Levy, because I can understand. How often does DeAndre Levy score a touchdown?
Right, exactly. But the important thing is how often Sue gets in the news for stuff like this. And you can say, "Oh, it's a media thing," but I think it's easy to say that the league is trying to make a statement to Mr. Sue here. $100,000, like you said, the highest ever on field, and if he does anything remotely controversial, which I'm sure is going to happen and I'm not saying, that's because the guy Sue is, but Sue's going to, Rodgers is going to drop back and he's going to hit him too hard and draw a flag. And then,
how about last year on Thanksgiving where his foot hit Schaub in the leg, and they called it, or they fined him for that, which I thought was ridiculous. It was completely unintentional.
It was really odd, and the kicking motion. But he draws this because of his stupidity before, where he'll, instead of just sacking Jake Delhomme, he tears his head off, and instead of, just walking away from something, removing himself from the situation, he stomps the Deidre Smith guy, and that's the reputation he brings. And unfortunately for him, is if this happens again, it could easily draw a suspension for a lesser crime. Like I think the hit was pretty brutal. Like,
so you think he should have been suspended?
I don't know if he should have been suspended. I think the fine is just to be completely honest, I am a bit surprised that he didn't maybe miss a game from the NFL's team.
If that happened, that would be. I think the fine is excessive. And if he would have missed a game, that would have been ridiculous.
I think it's an attempt to get his attention. And the reason it is because, it's one thing, and I think there's an interesting argument here, though, or interesting discussion. It's one thing if he was trying to, take out, and Schwartz even said this, take out like Peterson or a skill receiver.
Right.
But he was taking out the center who was, by the time he blocked him, Levy was at least 10 yards past him, more like 15. And there was no way he was going to. You watch those pick six guys just jog and, just to look good on film. There was no way he was going to catch him. Levy was closer to the goal line than the center was close to Levy. And Sue it looked dirty. It did. It looked just like unnecessary. And and I know you think that maybe he did. He rolled around center, but Sullivan didn't see Sue at all. Sue came from behind him and just took out his knee. And Sue has this thing. Oh, I was going for his waist. Okay, he was behind him and he dove and made direct contact.
The problem is that on a situation like that, if you're gonna block, which I think is a fine, in a change of possession, if you're a defender and you want to block somebody, you're playing football. That's what you're supposed to do.
I understand.
When a quarterback throws an interception, what is a defender's immediate response? I get a free shot at the quarterback.
Right. I understand.
That is standard football procedure.
But a free shot isn't where the guy doesn't see you and just take out his knee.
That's what I wanted to say. You can't go high now.
Yeah.
You cannot do it.
Yes.
Because you will be flagged.
Okay.
So, if you attempt to go low, which is really the only place you can go, because nowadays, if you hit like chest up, you're going too high. So, I'm not defending him, but he can't go high.
I understand, but at the same time, it looked dirty. And I'm being unbiased, and I saw it, and I was just, it looked dirty. It did. And the thing is if that's a different number, if that's 98 or 71, it doesn't draw a $100,000 fine. But because it says Sue on the back of his jersey, and because he stomped the guy on national television on Thanksgiving, and because he has he's so strong and excessive, and he body slams Cutler, like he does those kind of things on lines. Just like,
I would say 75% of the time Sue gets in trouble, it's completely warranted.
Oh, I was
25% unwanted.
I didn't think you were going to say it that way, because I know many lines are like, they hate us, and the Calvin rule.
Some of the things are ridiculous because you push Jay Cutler down and you're like flag.
See, and I understand. And I think what's an interesting discussion is if that was Peterson and the same thing happened, Sue's gone for like 2 games.
Oh,
especially
definitely. And he should be.
Peterson's got the knee thing, and
that's where you can say
the headline says Peterson done for the year. And to be honest, when I saw that, I thought that guy's knee was, and
he didn't miss a snap.
No, and I thought
he
maybe
couldn't have been hurt.
But it looked dirty and it looked bad. You see guys' knees go the wrong way, and it looked that way. It was like,
but the guy didn't miss a snap.
And I understand
it wasn't
that.
As bad as
it looked bad, and that's why I saw it on TV, and like I said, it's kind of in bar, and I was like, man, it was behind the play. Sue could have just ran and like chatted with the guy, and he would have been in the. But that's not the way Sue thinks. Sue's like, I gotta.
Right. Which, you know what? In some situations, I absolutely appreciate.
See, and I understand that he's just a different kind of guy.
He made 2 great plays during that game.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason Stephen Tulloch picked the ball off.
He's the reason Fairley got a sack.
Exactly, because they did not an end around, but I guess I'd call it like a bait and switch, where Sue took the guard and the center and Fairley looped around and bam,
basically
sack.
Untouched.
Right. So, and Ponder had no way of getting out of it. So he makes a lot of plays.
Sue, his stat line says that he had a QB hit and a pass deflected.
Right. But
and that's it.
Sue's stats are not.
And that's Schwartz prevalent. Even said, at the conference, that's what Schwartz said, and I would agree with that. It's just, I think he has a reputation that precedes himself, and whether people want to admit it or not, and I'm kind of glad you said that, it is warranted, because he's just, do I think he had 100% intent? And he has, what just is bizarre, the most bizarre thing is, unlike, his fellow teammate in like Fairley, is Sue's incredibly well-spoken, but almost like too much. He uses these words he doesn't need to, and he has these long, like, sentences that just go, and his quotes are weird. It's just, I thought it looked dirty. That's why I drew the fine, because it was. And I'm glad that it wasn't on a guy like Peterson, because I believe he'd be gone for a game or 2.
If it wasn't a guy like Peterson, I would be the first guy on here saying that was 100% dirty.
And I think, but the thing is there's no way Sullivan's going to catch him. And Schwartz even said that. Schwartz is like, you need to realize that he needs to realize
and
that.
I think I can appreciate it. For Schwartz to come out and say he wasn't going to catch him, he probably shouldn't have done that.
And ultimately,
and that's where I think,
as a fan, Sue's fine with money. The $100,000, maybe it's meant to wake him up, but it doesn't affect. But what it did affect is it took 7 points off the board.
Right.
And then the very next play, Stafford threw a pick.
Right.
And that can cost you later in games.
Yes. But Sue, I'll just end with this. Sue giveth and Sue taketh away.
Yeah.
So,
he stompeth too.
And you know what? You could argue that I can't remember if they scored on the drive where Tulloch picked that pass off. I think they did. But maybe Sue gives him 7 points there. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's a give and take thing, and he's going to play hard, and sometimes it's going to help you, and sometimes it's going to hurt you.
Unfortunately, if he keeps doing this, the NFL might taketh him away for like 2 games.
Well, yeah, that's a different discussion. Okay, we'll be back with some Tiger talk and Michigan State wrap up / preview. We didn't even mention the. Well, we'll talk about the Lions matchup next week as well in the second half. We hope you keep listening.